Hello, my name is Emily Windover. I'm from the Gettysburg branch of the Adams County Library, and I am here today to read some of Aesop's Fables. I'm starting with 3 bullocks and a lion. A lion had been watching 3 bullocks feeding in an open field. He had tried to attack them several times, but they had kept together and helped each other to drive him off. The lion had little hope of eating them, for he was no match for 3 strong bullocks with their sharp horns and hooves. But he could not keep away from that field, for it is hard to resist watching a good meal even if there is little chance of getting it. Then, one day, the bullocks had a quarrel, and when the hungry lion came to look at them and lick his chops, as he was accustomed to do, he found them in separate corners of the field, as far away from one another as they could get. It was now an easy matter for the lion to attack them one at a time, and this he proceeded to do with the greatest satisfaction and relish. In unity is strength. Mercury and the Woodmen. A poor woodman was cutting down a tree near the edge of a deep pool in the forest. It was late in the day, and the woodman was tired. He had been working since sunrise, and his strokes were not so sure as they had been early that morning. Thus it happened that the axe slipped and flew out of his hands and into the pool. The woodman was in despair. The axe was all he possessed with which to make a living, and he had not money enough to buy a new one. As he stood wringing his hands and weeping, the god Mercury suddenly appeared and asked what the trouble was. The woodman told what had happened, and straightway the kind Mercury dived into the pool. When he came up again, he held a wonderful golden axe. "Is this your axe?" Mercury asked the woodman. "No," answered the honest woodman, "that is not my axe." Mercury laid the golden axe on the bank and sprang back into the pool. This time he brought up an axe of silver, but the woodman declared again that his axe was just an ordinary one with a wooden handle. Mercury dived down for the 3rd time, and when he came up again, he had the very axe that had been lost. The poor woodman was very glad that his axe had been found and could not thank the kind god enough. Mercury was greatly pleased with the woodman's honesty. "I admire your honesty," he said, "and as a reward you may have all 3 axes, the gold and the silver, as well as your own." The happy woodsman returned to his home with his treasures, and soon the story of his good fortune was known to everybody in the village. And now there were several woodmen in the village who believed that they could easily win the same good fortune. They hurried out into the woods, one here, one there, hiding their axes in the bushes, pretending they had lost them, and then they wept and wailed and called on Mercury to help them. And indeed, Mercury did appear, first to this one, then to that. To each one he showed an axe of gold, and each one eagerly claimed it to be the one he had lost. But Mercury did not give them the golden axe. Oh no! Instead, he gave them each a hard whack over the head with it and sent them home. And when they returned the next day to look for their own axes, they were nowhere to be found. Honesty is the best policy. The Frog and the Mouse. A young mouse, in search of adventure, was running along the bank of a pond, where lived a frog. When the frog saw the mouse, he swam to the bank and croaked, "Won't you pay me a visit? I can promise you a good time if you do." The mouse did not need much coaxing, for he was very anxious to see the world and everything in it, but though he could swim a little, he dared not risk going into the pond without some help. The frog had a plan. He tied the mouse's leg to his own with a tough reed, and then into the pond he jumped, dragging his foolish companion with him. The mouse soon had enough of it and wanted to return to shore, but the treacherous frog had other plans. He pulled the mouse down under the water and drowned him. But before he could untie the reed that bound him to the dead mouse, a hawk came sailing over the pond. Seeing the body of the mouse floating on the water, the hawk swooped down, seized the mouse, and carried it off, with the frog dangling from its leg. Thus at one swoop he had caught both meat and fish for his dinner. Those who seek to harm others often come to harm themselves through their own deceit. This is a short one. The Fox and the Crab. A crab one day grew disgusted with the sands in which he lived. He decided to take a stroll to the meadow, not far inland. There he would find better fare than briny water and sand mites. So off he crawled to the meadow. But there a hungry fox spied him, and in a twinkling ate him up, both shell and claw. Be content with your lot. The Serpent and the Eagle. A serpent had succeeded in surprising an eagle and had wrapped himself around the eagle's neck. The eagle could not reach the serpent, neither with beak nor claws. Far into the sky he soared, trying to shake off his enemy. But the serpent's hold only tightened, and slowly the eagle sank back to earth, gasping for breath. A countryman chanced to see the unequal combat. In pity for the noble eagle, he rushed up and soon had loosened the coiling serpent and freed the eagle. The serpent was furious. He had no chance to bite the watchful countryman. Instead, he struck at the drinking horn, hanging at the countryman's belt, and into it let fly the poison of his fangs. The countryman now went on toward home. Becoming thirsty on the way, he filled his horn at a spring and was about to drink. There was a sudden rush of great wings. Sweeping down, the eagle seized the poisoned horn from out of his savior's hands and flew away with it to hide it where it could never be found. An act of kindness is well repaid. The wolf in sheep's clothing. A certain wolf could not get enough to eat because of the watchfulness of the shepherds. But one night he found a sheepskin that had been cast aside and forgotten. The next day, dressed in the skin, the wolf strolled into the pasture with the sheep. Soon a little lamb was following him about and was quickly led away to the slaughter. That evening the wolf entered the fold with the flock, but it happened that the shepherd took a fancy for mutton broth that very evening, and picking up a knife, went to the fold. And there the first he laid hands on and killed was the wolf. The evildoer often comes to harm through his own deceit. The Bull and the Goat. A bull once escaped from a lion by entering a cave which the goat herds used to house their flocks in stormy weather and at night. It happened that one of the goats had been left behind, and the bull had no sooner got inside than this goat lowered his head and made a rush at him, butting him with his horns. As the lion was still prowling outside the entrance to the cave, the bull had to submit to the insult. "Do not think," he said, "that I submit to your cowardly treatment because I am afraid of you. When that lion leaves, I'll teach you a lesson you won't forget." It is wicked to take advantage of another's distress. And my last one for you today is the eagle and the beetle. A beetle once begged the eagle to spare a hare which had run to her for protection. But the eagle pounced upon her prey, the sweep of her great wings tumbling the beetle a dozen feet away. Furious at the disrespect shown her, the beetle flew to the eagle's nest and rolled out the eggs. Not one did she spare. The eagle's grief and anger knew no bounds, but who had done the cruel deed she did not know. The next year the eagle built her nest far up on a mountain crag, but the beetle found it and again destroyed the eggs. In despair, the eagle now implored great Jupiter to let her place her eggs in his lap. There none would dare harm them. But the beetle buzzed about Jupiter's head and made him rise to drive her away, and the eggs rolled from his lap. Now the beetle told the reason for her action, and Jupiter had to acknowledge the justice of her cause. And they say that ever after, while the eagle's eggs lie in the nest in the spring, the beetle still sleeps in the ground, for so Jupiter commanded. Even the weakest may find means to avenge a wrong.